Hello, my name is Alan, I'm from Sauber-Lab, and today I will explain a little bit for your starting point when you have in mind to create your NAS server or to start to develop your own media center. In this video, I will not go through some NAS, all build NAS options, because in the idea it's you build yourself. So in this video, I will explain a little bit more about the Raspberry Pi and what you need to consider on it and what demand that you need to have, as well when you go to assemble your own computer or when you're gonna choose it for your own NAS server or your media center. If you like this idea, don't forget to leave your like a red. Subscribe for the channel will be really good, and let's go to see how we can do it. First of all, when I start to say starting point, it's when you don't have anything in mind, you don't have all your hardware in home. So you can consider some points before buy anything. Remember, this stage, we are not thinking for high-end servers, which will need a lot of money. We are thinking for small servers that will be able to handle 1 or 2 users, stream it outside for your home, or either to have a center when all your data is stored in the same place. In this way, you can use different computers to access this data in one point. So when you start to consider this one, your media center or your NAS server, you need to have some points in mind. First of all, it's what you're gonna use it or what will be the application that you're gonna use it. I will start with the option from a media center, because this one will need a little bit better hardware, considering only if you want to store all your data in the same place. If you go to a media center, you need to understand how many users will need to stream at the same time, how many users will need to transcode at the same time, and all these small points. I look a lot for internet to find different websites that explain a little bit more for it and what it's recommended or what's the minimum spec. I look a little bit internet. The only website that I find more information about minimum requirement for your CPU to stream and transcode was in the Plex website. If you don't know what is Plex, Plex is one of the options for media stream. So you have all your media in your local or maybe in your cloud. You can stream using your server, you can stream this data outside from your house or either local in your LAN and watch all your medias in any place. If you do direct transmission, you don't need so much powerful CPU. But if you need to transcode for different device, you're gonna need to transcode. But why I need to transcode one video or one file for me? I will give one idea. You have a video that it's 1080p and you want to get this video for your phone. And your phone maybe don't have capacity to run a 1080p video, or maybe because you are streaming outside your network, maybe the band that you have in your home is not enough to transmit all the information for 1080p. So you need to transcode it to be more user-friendly for your device. Having this one in mind, I got the Plex website where they explain a little bit for the minimum requirements for your CPU. Here, what you need as a minimum requirement for do a directly transmission. If you do a directly transmission, you need to have at least a Athlon 1.2 GHz. What they comment here that most of NAS that have an ARM device, they will be able to do a directly transmission without any issue. So I'm not happy with directly transmission. I want to transcode my videos. To do so, if I want to transcode a single 720p, I'll need to have at least a Core i3 with 3 GHz. If I want to do a 1080p, we need a little bit better, a E5 with 3 GHz, and consequently, if I need a 4K transcoding, I'll need at least a i7 3.2 GHz. So this one don't explain so much for me. What's more important for have in mind is this table below, this guideline. What they comment is the minimum score that they suggest to have in your CPU for do that transcoding. If you don't know about Passmark, I will give some example. I come here in the website for Passmark where they do the CPU benchmark, and here it's one example that I have for my CPU in one of my server. I have a E5 4570 with 3.2 GHz. If I look for my score, it's 5163. Returning from here for the Plex website, they say for transcoding 720p, I need to have at least 1500 on the Passmark. In my case, my CPU will handle it because I have over 5000. If I continue and look for 1080p, it means that they need to have at least 2000 in pass mark. And in my CPU I have 5000, so we'll be able to handle it. If I go for 4K, they will have a 12,000 and therefore I will not be able to handle it properly transcoding. Have other things to consider. You're gonna be dependent on how much binary that you have or what final resolution that you want to transcode. In this case, they say that you want to transcode for 4K in 40 megabits or 8 bits of color for 10 megabits in 1080p. In this situation, I need to have a little bit more processor power in my CPU. Or other option, you can do a hardware transcode. In this video, not explain a hardware transcode because it's other point in the other video. But as I start, you need to consider your CPU to have these minimal requirements if you want. Have in mind which CPU that you're gonna have in your server. Then it's now the time to look for the RAM memory. How much memory that you're gonna need? Basically, depend on which kind of operating system that you're gonna have and how much that they will handle it with others application. If you're gonna use a Windows server or a FreeNAS, you're gonna need a little bit more RAM memory because they say that minimum requirement is 4 or 5 and continue. If you're gonna run a little bit more light system as a Linux based, a Debian or a Ubuntu or Open Media Val, one of the videos I will explain more about it. You can have, you need a little bit less, but as well, it's good to have at least 8 to 16 gigabytes of RAM for handling, either for transcoding, because you can use your RAM memory to do all your transcoding in your RAM instead of your SSD or your hard drive. As well, you can handle more applications in the same time without get the limit of your RAM memory. Then the choice of which RAM memory that you want, it's not so important this stage. You don't need to have a really fast RAM memory with most of the applications because this one will not increase the FPS or will not increase the performance of your server. But you need to have a big amount enough to handle all your applications. Next step, how you're gonna keep your data. You need to define what kind of application that you need and how fast you want to access this data. If you go for the option for SSD, it means that you're looking for an option that you have a low latency and fast answer. You can collect the data with a high speed. Remember, doesn't matter you have SSD if you have a 1 gigabyte switch connected to your server. So the bottleneck will be the 1 gigabyte switch that you have, and that's either that you put all full SSDs will not handle fast in it. Only the latency will be quite low. Other option will be the hard drive, where it's used for a lot of application. And it's good because they have high capacity. You can have a hard drive for 12, 16 gigabytes. And I don't doubt that in future will be more. As well, you have a high rate writing side. It means that it can write a high quantity in a year. As well, it's a little bit cheaper compared for our option for SSD. I don't doubt that in the future as well will be a cheap option for SSD, what's it's going on. But at the moment, the hard drive seems a little bit better option. After having in mind which CPU that you're gonna use, which memory RAM that you're gonna use, how much you're gonna use, which option of storage that you're gonna use, then come an option for the ventilation, how you're gonna handle the temperature, the heating that it emits for the processing your system. If you have a CPU that have a TDP of 84 watts, it means that your cooling system needs to be able to handle at least 84 watts of temperature dissipation. Otherwise, they will be overheating and will not work as expected. Other thing, you need to consider how you're gonna cool all your system. You can have a lot of fans connected to your case, where they will allow that the temperature leave your case. As well, you need to consider how to cooling the hard drives or SSD, because when they are running, normally they tend to warm up. So you need to consider it as well. Then the last observation that you need to consider when you're building your server, it's what kind of power supply that you're gonna use. For the power supply, you have a lot of options. First of all, you need to calculate how much power that your system will use. You have a lot of options for the internet that they suggest what's the minimal power supply that you need to have. You cannot only consider how powerful is your power supply. You need to consider what rating that your power supply is. Because if you're gonna run your server 24 hours per day, 7 days a week, 4 weeks a month and continually, this one will consume some power. And if the efficiency of your power supply is not good enough for your application, then you're gonna spend money unnecessarily. So I opened this site for Wikipedia, where they explain a little bit more for efficiency of the power supplies. You have a 8+ label, where they give a minimum requirement of 8% as 8+. And if you go for other options, you started to handle a better efficiency for the same power supply. If you go for 8+ bronze, you're gonna have 85% of efficiency and 50% of load. And if you go for silver option, you have 88. If you go for gold option, would be 9%, platinum 92%, and titanium will be 94%. What it means? Let's say that your computer run, they will use around 300 watts with all the components working. And you have a power supply of 600 watts. It means that you're using 50% of the maximum loading rating for your power supply. And then they will go in this middle term where it's 50% of load that will have a better efficiency. If you go to consider this one, it's always better you consider the power supply running at 50% of load, therefore you have the best efficiency. Otherwise, you're gonna run the both options that they will be a little bit low efficient, but not something that you need to worry about. At this stage, we review more or less what kind of hardware that you're gonna need. In this stage is quite fast because I didn't go through specific points. In other videos, we will go for each one and explain a little bit more about it. But as I start, you don't need to buy everything new, because this one will gonna spend some money, and as I start you don't need it. You need to get what will fit for your needs, or you can always upgrade. This reason what I suggest is to go for eBay or a second-hand option, and you'll get something a little bit low spec, and that you're gonna run it, make your trials, and until you get something that really work for you. And that after this one you have more knowledge, then you're gonna choose what is final option for you, what will cost a little bit more than you get a second hand. One of example, you can go to eBay and buy old desktop that have one i5, one i7, and this CPU will be enough already to start your trials. So you don't need to start to spend lots of things as a start. You need only to start. Now it's the time to choose what kind of OS that you're gonna install. You have a lots of options that you can install, but you need to consider which kind of application that you're gonna install and if it will work well in your case or not. To give some examples, I will go for the Plex website only because it's easy to show. If I go here in the Plex, this kind of media stream, you have a lots of options of operating system that you can use. You can use in FreeNAS, you can use in Linux, you can use in Mac, Windows, a lots of options of NAS server. As well, you can use in Docker. So you have a high quantity of platforms that you can install. But depending on which application that you go to use, they don't have so many options. Sometimes it's better to use for OS that will fit most of your applications. So in lots of my videos, I will explain more about Linux applications. So I hope that you like this video. I go through some points that I start my view. And at the next videos, I will explain more specific what kind of storage that you can use and what kind of hard drive that you need to choose, or what kind of SSD that you need to choose for your application as well. What's the best cost-effective CPU that you can use, or how much RAM memory and why you need that RAM memory, and so on. So if you like this video, leave your like straight away. You don't lose anything. If you don't like and think that it's unusable, leave your dislike, subscribe for the channel. See you the next time.